live, I believe.
Okay. Okay, and the mayor is or is not in yet?
Here he comes.
Oh, good.
Mayor's in.
Excellent. Okay. And Dr. Adamaski is also in too. Everybody's in.
Yes.
Okay, so everybody's here, so we're ready to go. Okay, so at 7:05, we can call the meeting to order and we can start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we move into the agenda for the meeting this evening, there's a couple of things that I would like to just quickly go through. First, I think that we should have a moment of silence for George Floyd and for everyone that we have lost to violence and poverty and all of the manifestations of racism and oppression, and also for all of the people that we have lost to COVID. So if you would all join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Second, I would like to just make a brief clarifying statement for the benefit of anybody in the community who might be watching about the communication that went out from Norwalk Public Schools on Friday. I had said this to Nancy on Norwalk also, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone was clear that the primary intention of the email was to let parents and families know what people were proposing, what the plans were being proposed, not to present them as a concrete thing that was being done, but to let parents and families into the process of what was being developed so that we could solicit feedback, so that a survey could then go out to families and they could provide input on what they would feel comfortable with. Because if we don't know what families will be comfortable with, then we need families' input into the plans that we're making. And also I wanted to let everybody know that, and the mayor can also jump in on this too, that we spoke today about just making sure that we're all really communicating together. We have a plan to have a meeting next week about the proposal to reopen summer school in whatever way that will be developed finally, with the input of Joanne Malinowski, who's our head nurse, Deanna Diamore, who's the city health department head, and also Dr. Weinberger. Mr. Mayor, I don't know if you want to jump in on that.
Just for a moment. Thank you, Sarah. I know we did have a good conversation today. And over the past couple of days, we talked about how important it is to get this right and make sure that we're all on board and we all feel comfortable. Obviously, first and foremost, the number one thing that we have to work on and make sure we're all comfortable with is the health and safety of our students and our staff, especially considering the pediatric inflammatory syndrome that we're seeing. We want to make sure that it's safe to go back into the classroom. And I think working together with the reopening team that the Board of Education has in place, working with Dr. Weinberger, working with the nursing staff, the head nurse, we're going to put together a plan that will make parents feel comfortable that it's okay to proceed with summer school. I mentioned that while July 6th is a date to be looking at, July 6th may work for Pomfret, Connecticut with a population of 3,000 or 4,000, but it might not be working for Norwalk, depending on where we are with the number of new cases and the availability of testing. So I'm confident that we're going to be working together. We're going to make sure that we get it right. And once the program or the recommendations are put forth, Dr. Adamowski, Dr. Estrella, me, and others will take a look at it, and we'll put our blessings on it. So again, thank you to the Board of Education members for stepping up and making sure that we work together. I know I spoke with Mr. Hostin as well, Colin, and I think we have a good plan in place. Thank you.
For sure, of course. Yeah, and I also wanted to express that I understand how difficult it is for families, myself included, to manage the amount of uncertainty that we have to live with right now. And so I know everyone would really like to know what the concrete plan is. And the only answer that we can give is that it is in the process of being developed, and that we are making sure that everyone is paying the utmost attention to developing it with parent and family feedback. And so that survey went out this week, and we will be receiving the results of that survey. Hopefully by the beginning of next week, we'll have a significant amount of responses. And then at that point, final planning can begin to be codified, and then we will have it out for review. So that is number 2. And then number 3, to pivot to a happier thing in this strange and difficult time, I would like to, on behalf of the board, say Happy Pride Month to everybody, and to just express my appreciation and our appreciation for the wonderful contributions of all our LGBTQ families, parents, staff, students, and the Norwalk community. We're all richer for all of the different kinds of diversity that we have together. So that, and then I think that we can finally move on to the actual agenda items. I'm sorry to have loaded us with so many other things that were not on the agenda. So the first item on the agenda is our work session about the Mass Insight Education and Research Readiness findings. And so I think I'm tossing to Dr. Myers, is that right?
Sarah, I'm just going to provide a few words of introduction on these, okay?
Sure, thank you.
You know, it's been hard in this COVID-19 environment to think about anything else. But, you know, we have, at the same time we're dealing with this, we've been trying to pursue the goals that the board set back in September. And the last 2 of those, or the manifestation of the last 2 of those, is on your workshop topic for tonight. The first deals with the underperformance of Cranberry and Nathan Hale schools. This was discussed at the board's retreat last summer, and it was determined that we had to develop some type of a plan and support the schools in various ways in order so that students could reach their potential in those schools. And then another dealt with concern that was expressed over the small numbers of teachers in our school system that were coaching. This was based upon the data at the retreat that only 1/3 of Norwalk faculty were coaching in the athletic program, and most of the coaches were coming from out of town, out of district. And of course, you know, that has less of a positive relationship impact on students than if they can have a teacher in the classroom and then have that teacher as a coach or advisor on the field as well. And there's a good deal of research on this. Those are the 2 remaining topics. Most of the topics of the large goals relative to your implementation steps we've covered earlier in the year. These are the 2 remaining ones. And before I turn to Dr. Meyer, I just want to say a few words about Cranberry and Nathan Hale. Cranberry and Nathan Hale on the surface are doing fairly well. Both schools, however, have had a lowered status on the state report card due to having gap outliers. these are the two schools, while every school in Norwalk is diverse, these are the two schools that have the smallest percentage of high needs students. I think it's in the 40% range. The district average is 66%. And as you know, many of our schools, with much higher levels of high needs students, have done extremely well, even made it to category 1. And so that has been a wonderful source of celebration. But just based upon the number of high needs students, both Nathan Hale and Cranberry should be the highest achieving middle school and elementary school, respectively. So the examination of this started with meetings that I had with the faculty at the beginning of the school year to talk with them about this issue, along with their principals. The staff was very embracing of a study of this and being able to develop an improvement plan. They all said that we can do better than this. We need to know what and how and why, and some type of systematic way of working together on it. So it was from that standpoint that to provide the schools with support, that we asked Mass Insight to work with us on what is called a root cause analysis and improvement plan. Mass Insight is the author, is a think tank in Massachusetts. They're the author of a very famous report by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that really is the Bible for school turnaround, what works, what doesn't work. And they have developed this root cause analysis methodology that enables them to determine how the improvement plan should be focused. They have spent time in our schools. They've met with every staff member. They've observed classes. And we're very pleased to be able to report back on this tonight, because this essentially provides a path forward for both schools in the next school year. So with that as introduction, I'm going to ask Dr. Myers if she would take over. And we have guests, and our colleagues from Mass Insight, I understand, are also in the meeting tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Adamowski. Good evening, board members. One of the things that we want to make sure everyone is assured is that when we gather data from our children and we analyze that data, we make a commitment to a spirit of continuous improvement. There will be no sense in gathering data if you're not going to look closely at it and continue to ask, what are the best processes, strategies? What are the pieces that we need to bring to our schools, and what does the data tell us? And sometimes, because we are committed to improvement as a process as well as a partnership, we always want to look at the best practice in this country and say, where do we turn to look at school improvement planning? How do we bring a school around, a community around the support of children? How do we use that data in an effective way? And so we were honored this year to be able to work with Mass Insight as our partner, our guide by our side, to say, let's look at some of the best processes for building partnerships for improving our schools. And let's go and, as Dr. Adamowski mentioned, I just couldn't be more proud of the work that Cranberry and Nathan Hale did, the welcoming of the staff, the families, the students, the input. They're to be commended for being really active partners in this process. This evening, we have Kristen Goldstein and Michael Klein, who are our leaders from Cranberry. We have Christina Guerrera and Albert Saki, who are here as our leaders from Nathan Hale. Sandra is our director for school improvement. And I will turn it over to our very special partner representing Mass Insight tonight, who's really been our guide by the side, and such a pleasure to work with, Jenna Bullock.
Thank you, Dr. Myers. Thank you, Dr. Adamowski, and good evening to the board members and the Norwalk community. I am very pleased and honored to be joining you this evening. Dr. Myers, I do want to check, it will be best if I screen share from my own computer. Is that correct?
That'd be great.
Great. Give me just one moment to get the PowerPoint presentation
As the PowerPoint is coming up, just a couple of things. The actual reports that were done about school readiness were attached to the board agenda. But then what we did is we summarized the process in the PowerPoint for presentation this evening. So the board and the public do have the reports and the PowerPoint.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Myers. We can all see a blue slide that says partnership update. Great, thank you.
Yes.
Great, thank you. All right. Well, again, I'm really pleased to be here this morning. This evening. Thanks again for having me. I do want to echo two things before diving in. One is that we know there is much occupying the hearts and minds of folks right now. And so we hold that space with you all in Norwalk. I know certainly there's a lot on my heart and my mind right now as well. I also want to again acknowledge the leadership that is joining us this evening from Cranberry, Kristen and Michael, and also from Nathan Hale, Dr. Saki, and Christina as well. Their leadership through this work and this partnership has been important and incredibly helpful. And so again, just thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. And I'm just so appreciative of the partnership. So in terms of our time this evening, a quick overview of what you can expect in about the next 30 minutes. The first is that I'll introduce who is Mass Insight, what are we about, and what's the partnership with Norwalk. And then we'll spend the majority of our time sharing what work has been done so far and how it's going. And then finally, closing out with what's coming next, and a bit of a status update on the work that you can expect moving forward. So in terms of who Mass Insight is, Dr. Adamowski spoke a little bit to this and teed this up. We are a mission-driven nonprofit that is based in Massachusetts, in the Boston area. We are mission-driven in that we envision a world in which student outcomes and achievement is no longer related to race and gender, ethnicity, social class, zip code, and that is possible because all students have equitable opportunities and
Jenna,
supports.
can you just check your slide? I don't see the slide changing with the presentation. Are you good?
Oh, thanks for noting that. Give me one moment. Let me check it. Any better now?
No, we're still on the first slide.
Okay, just one moment.
There you go.
Okay. Oh, probably lost it. Thank you, Dr. Myers. We can see it now?
Perfect.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, so in terms of who we are, again, mission-driven nonprofit, we started in 1997, again, envisioning a world in which student outcomes and achievement are not related to gender, race, ethnicity, social class. And that is really as a result of all students having access to opportunities and supports and quality education. And since we have spent a lot of time in the field learning and growing with partners, both states and districts and schools. And as Dr. Adamowski mentioned, our organization published the Turnaround Challenge in 2007, which is everything that we had learned up to that point around school improvement and school transformation. And since then, we have been applying that in the field and again, learning alongside our partners to really understand what it takes and what works best when it comes to school improvement. In 2017, we published our sort of elements that we landed on that really highlight what school improvement includes. And that is part of the work and the process that we were able to engage in with Cranberry and Nathan Hale. This map represents the different partnerships that we have across the country. And of course, we are excited and pleased to be partnered with Norwalk Public Schools. In terms of what we are about, so in all that we have learned along the way about school improvement, there are some really important understandings that we hold very close. The first is that there is no magic wand in school improvement. If there was, we would all have it by now. School improvement is complex and it is complicated, and the context and the location matters a great deal. Second is that every school has strengths. Even while schools face incredible challenges, there are always strengths to leverage and to build on. And that is a key pillar of our work as we partner with schools and districts. Additionally, different challenges can produce the same results, but those challenges require tailored solutions. So for example, let's say a school is seeing a lower proficiency with math. At one school, it may be because maybe math is in the afternoon. And so there might be some hypotheses around math in the afternoon and students' attention versus a different school where there may be lower proficiency in math, but maybe it's because there was a new curriculum implemented in 7th grade, and maybe teachers could use additional support or training or resources because of the new curriculum. And so in each case, you may see a lower proficiency in math, but the reason behind that might be really different. And so the solution has to be tailored. In one case, it might be about schedules, and in another case, it might be about support and resources. And so that also is something that we keep front and center. Additionally, a more common mistake than doing not enough is actually trying to do too much. Schools and districts are taxed by capacity, and there is a lot of important work and efforts put behind school improvement. That said, if everything is a priority, nothing can be a priority. And so there's a real need to narrow the focus when working with schools. And lastly here, the people doing the work have to own the work. And so that really centers the local context, the local stakeholders, and the leaders, the staff, the family, the students in the building. And so those are the folks who own the plan, who develop the plan, and certainly implement the plan. And so those are some of the pillars that we hold and bring to the work that we engage in with partners. So in terms of what our partnership with Norwalk is, again, Dr. Adamowski took this up. We were able to partner with both Cranberry and Nathan Hale around two processes. First, a school diagnostic to understand what is the current reality, to look at the data, to talk with stakeholders and understand the current context. And then second was to follow that with a school improvement planning process to say, based on the data, based on the stakeholder wants and the stakeholder needs, what can be done? What are the next steps in order for the school to drive their own change efforts? And so for both of those, that was the partnership that we have with Norwalk. So in terms of what's been done so far, here's a bit of an update we're excited to share. We're going to start with Cranberry, the story of Cranberry, and we're going to do so with a bit of a timeline here. So in December of 2019, Mass Insights team spent 3 days at Cranberry, and we talked with stakeholders, we talked with teachers, and we talked with leadership, and we talked with students. We had student groups. We talked with family, community members, and student support staff. And we visited classrooms. We visited all grade levels and content areas, and we observed lunch, and we observed arrival, and we observed dismissal. And based on that, we were able to organize and synthesize the evidence into a findings report that we shared with schools, with the school and with leadership. And so in January of 2020 is when we really started to determine with leadership what the process would look like going forward, making sure that stakeholders were involved each step of the way, staff, the SGC, and the broader community. And so the district and the school really tailored those planning session details around the wants and the needs of Cranberry. So January was really about gearing up and getting ready. And then in February, the team met, the Cranberry School Improvement team met for 2 days, and they spent time developing the plan, analyzing the data, identifying priorities, setting goals, and determining strategies to really build out that plan. Again, Mass Insight believes that the people doing the plan have to own the plan. And so there's a huge piece of this that's really concentrated on the process and including folks and bringing folks along each step of the way. And then finally, in March through May, this is where, again, I think it's a real celebration and a highlight of Cranberry and what they've been able to continue. So even through COVID-19, Cranberry's team has continued to meet and continue to work forward on their plan, make progress, and implement the steps that they had landed on. And so we are very excited about that and certainly share in the enthusiasm of Cranberry's team to continue the great work forward, even in light of the extreme challenges that everyone is facing. So that's a brief overview of the timeline. I'm going to give us a bit of a deeper dive into the two phases, both the school diagnostic and also the school improvement planning phase. And then I'm going to turn it over to Cranberry to speak a little bit about their experience in the process. Here's first the deep dive on the school diagnostic. So I mentioned that our team was able to analyze, synthesize, and organize the findings. We did so in a report. The report is organized around 4 key areas. First, the data profile. Second, strengths and challenges, a summary of findings, and a priority focus areas section. This report then is really the launching pad for school improvement planning. It is a non-evaluative report. It is really the way in which we gather the data and the evidence to be able to launch a school into school improvement planning. So from this came some really clear strengths. For Cranberry specifically, the first strength is around data team meetings. Cranberry implements meetings routinely with teachers to look at student work, talk about student data, and talk about what changes and improvements can be made to instruction to further academic outcomes for students. That is an incredible strength of Cranberry. We saw it in action. We talked to stakeholders, and this was certainly resounding. We also heard about the implementation of thinking maps. This is an initiative and a process that Cranberry started this year to really work towards critical thinking and helping students draw connections between their learning. That was a strength. And positive and safe classroom environments. We talked to students, we asked them if they have a trusted adult in the building. Students said yes. We asked them, if they enjoy their classes, they say yes. And so there's lots of positivity and safe spaces in Cranberry, and students were able to share that with us. In addition to strengths, there were some key challenges that did emerge. The first was around systems and structures. There is a lack of systems and structures that support the work and the improvement efforts of Cranberry. And so that was one thing that we knew that Cranberry would want to dig into further during the school improvement planning session. Additionally, the master schedule presented some challenges. Students were pulled out at certain times for different services in addition to different enrichment opportunities. And because of that, it made it really challenging for schools to be in class during core instruction time for math, for reading, for science. So that was something that emerged that would just need to be considered and sort of examined as Cranberry moved forward, and they certainly did. And I know that Kristen and Michael both have updates to share with us. And then finally, rigor of instruction. Another key challenge is that while Cranberry is implementing school thinking maps across the school, there is also an opportunity to increase the rigor of instruction across classrooms and ensure that students have opportunities to think critically and deeply across grade levels and across content areas. And then in terms of school improvement planning, again, I'll just give a brief overview here and then certainly turn it over to Cranberry to take us the rest of the way. When we met in February with Cranberry's team, we worked through a process that included 4 phases. The first was the diagnostic review. This is an opportunity to look at the report that Mass Insight put together, in addition to data that Cranberry provided, student data, data around attendance, and as well as publicly available data. And then Cranberry moved into a root cause analysis, and they really examined and interrogated, why does the data say what it does? Which led them to strategies and goals. Okay, based on what the root causes are, what goals do we want to set for the upcoming academic year, and what strategies will get us there? And then finally, action planning, determining who will do what by when to make sure that the plan is implemented. The outcome, of course, the process is the most important. Those 4 phases, it was incredible to watch Cranberry's team really come together and become a united team, and one that really is incredibly invested in this process. I think the outcome is less important, honestly, than the process itself, but it did result in a school improvement plan that Cranberry will use to drive their efforts in the next year. And we asked all of the participants on Cranberry's team at the end of the second day how they felt about the process, what they were experiencing as they were thinking about moving forward with this work. And we put together a quick Wordle here of all the words that Cranberry's team left with. And I know it may be small here on the Zoom share, but I'll voice over a few: committed, motivated, pumped, powerful, inspired, invigorated. And these were the team's words after the day of planning. And I think it just, again, really as a celebration, a highlight to the incredible work of the team as they really came together to interrogate the data and examine the root causes. And so again, it was a pleasure to work with Cranberry's team. That's just scratching the surface of the great work that they have done. And I want to turn it over to Kristen and Michael to take us the rest of the way to share more about your experience as school leaders in the process. I will continue to move the slides ahead, so just let me know when you're ready for the next one.
First of all, thank you everybody for having us here tonight. This really was a really meaningful process to go through with our staff. And so Michael Klein and I are going to share a little bit with you this evening about really what that felt like, where we are right now, and some of the fundamental changes that have taken place for us at this time. Mike, do you want to start?
Definitely. The process has been illuminating. I mean, Cranberry's got great people at it, which definitely helps the process move forward. But throughout the piece, we've been committed to seeing all of our students get to a better end outcome. And I think the best part is that teachers felt heard throughout this process, and it allowed us to collaborate and kind of dive deeper into what our root causes have been, and allow us to create a plan where we can collaborate together and figure out what those action steps are going to look like moving forward. So it's been very helpful.
I think one of the main things for our staff, when we asked the staff members who was interested in being a part of this planning team, we were looking for a 12-member team. And this was one of the times when we have truly seen excitement. So we very easily were able to fill that team with volunteers that stretched across our classroom teachers, our specialists, our special education staff, administration, our coaches. So we had quite a number of people represented here. And it was, I will tell you, the first day when we sat down to review the report and analyze the data, it wasn't easy. Everyone had to come to the table ready to grapple with some difficult truths about where we are, where we want to go, what our children are capable of, and what we as a staff need to do differently in order to get them there. So I would say one piece of this process that was helpful was that it helped us have the difficult conversations that we needed to have in order to make a plan to move forward. So on the left, you'll just sort of see the process that we went through, as Jenna was sort of explaining. We spent a lot of that probably the first half of that first day going through all of the information we had, understanding the report, getting everybody on the same page, and starting to have those first really tough conversations. The pieces that, one of the areas that we talked about has to do with our climate and culture, looking at both our math performance and our ELA performance. So for every individual there were pieces that were more challenging than others to sort of take in and then problem solve. But at the end of it, we were able to celebrate together about what is good and positive about Cranberry, because there are so many wonderful things, and how do we take those things and build upon them to continue to grow. Mike, do you want to talk about the outcomes?
Definitely. To me, the best part is that we started to build better coherence at our school. We started to look at a focusing direction. We looked at how this is going to implement in terms of our professional learning plan and how we're going to help support our students and our staff. It's enhanced our school culture and climate. We've heard it throughout all of the meetings that we have. Teachers feel heard. Our voices are been shared, and it's not just one person or any individual saying this is what we're going to do, but it's a collaborative effort amongst our entire staff, which has brought us to the table in a very nice manner.
Jen, if you want to move forward.
So the nice part about this deep dive is one of the nice elements that Mass Insight was able to do is they collected data and looked at a wide net of information. whether you're looking at some of the local information or some of the state information, or even our staff and community surveys as well. It was listening and hearing what our parents had to say, what our teachers had to say, and how are our students doing. So it allowed us to dive down into 3 different areas here. Whether it was the NWA of students not meeting grade level expectations, whether it was students not making consistent growth, or even staff and students having low satisfaction in places. But the best part is, as we unpacked a lot of these elements, we will find next steps. Jenna. And it allowed us to set some tangible goals. So as you'll notice, each one of these professional learning plan goals was attached to one of the areas that we were able to dive deeper into. We were able to look at some of our information and look at how our kids were doing and be able to say, okay, where do we want our students to be able to get to? So whether it's looking at local assessments like the math exemplars and being able to identify out how many of our students make grade level practitioner, which is grade level performance or higher, and how many we want to be able to aspire to. It allowed us to set some tangible metrics here and allow us to make some great indicators so that we can look at our school performance on a wide range and not just one metric, which is very helpful. And it allowed us to cast a wide net, which is which we appreciate Mass Insight's guidance for.
All right, Jenna, we'll go forward. And that's what really leads us into the essential questions that we were asking as a team. This is what drove our entire professional learning plan. So this is one example. So this is from the essential question for our priority challenge number 1. And it was, how do we design and execute a comprehensive math professional development plan specific to Cranberry? And how do we implement equitable, consistent math support? So that's the question that we raised to our entire team. From that, we then break that down into the specific plan for the year. It will be, what are the steps we're taking? Who is responsible for those steps? What's our timeline? What's our metric? What's our data? And what are the resources that we'll need? So we had these essential questions for each of our priority areas, different essential questions that we needed to answer in order to come up with a really comprehensive plan. So we had started this in our 2 days with Mass Insight, but there is no way for us to be able to get through that entire process in 2 days. So once we left, I'm happy to say we had a lot of momentum with our team. So we met when we were still in school before we were closed for distance learning, but we've actually had a few opportunities to bring that team back together and continue that work. So we have been working on finalizing the professional learning plan, making some tweaks, and of course we've had to do some changes with the plan, just being that we're not in school right now and there are certain pieces we can't move forward with yet. But also knowing that fall very well will look a little bit different for our students and for the staff. Where do we need to focus our attention when we first return? So we're shifting our timelines a little bit, but we've been able to continue that plan. We're currently working on scheduling, which that was an area that we saw was an issue, our master schedule. When you have itinerant staff that are only in the building at certain times, that's certainly a hurdle that you have for your scheduling when you're meeting the needs of all of your students that need various supports. It's limiting. And we certainly found, especially over the last 2 years with the change in our population, a number of students that might be participating in different activities, whether it's band, strings, receiving EL support, GT, special education. It certainly was causing a bit of havoc on our master schedules and our teachers in the classrooms. So that's something that that our team is actually still working on now. We have some different iterations going, but depending on what the fall looks like, we're not solidifying anything yet because we need to see sort of what's coming. But so we are in those conversations now, and the team is still working beautifully together. And they are excited for some of the changes that we put in place and some of the things that they see coming. And Mike, do you have anything else?
No, I mean, we're very excited not only about the changes that are going on, but also we saw an uptick in our results even in the winter as well. We were headed in the right direction. We noticed that we had about a 10% uptick on some of our local assessments, and we were excited about it. We know that the shutdown definitely put a little bit of a wrench in the whole assessment system and portfolio, but we noticed that a lot of things were headed in the right path, and we're excited about the path that's going to happen at Cranberry for sure.
Great. Thank you, Kristen and Michael. Dr. Myers, I would welcome any additional comments that you have. Otherwise, certainly would open it up for questions for Cranberry, for myself, for folks who have been involved in this process with Cranberry.
Certainly. Let's see if the board has any questions for our team.
For sure. If nobody minds, I will jump right in if that's okay. Do we want to take down the screen share so that we can all see each other while we're having a discussion, or it'd be less disorienting for me? Thank you. So I like that one of your foundational principles that you mentioned was that the school has to own the changes that are happening. And I wanted to know if you could just speak to either Kristen, if you want to, or Jenna, if you would like to, any sort of modeling advice on how to get that buy-in, particularly if there are circumstances in which it's not just there on the ground. Do you know what I mean?
I will begin. I would have to say, when we first broached the subject with the staff and told them that we were going to be doing this, that was a challenging conversation, and for a number of different reasons. First, it's that moment of all of us having to realize, all right, we need to make some changes. We've been talking about it, we've been focusing on some different things, but it was that difficult moment, and not knowing what to expect, I think was challenging for the staff. Once we got through the process and we were able to come back together, share some of those results, but then get those volunteers to be a part of that team. As soon as we started that work, it was amazing, the shift. They became excited. They were truly very invested in those conversations. So I would say just the thought of how we have those initial conversations, as we move forward and teams are doing this in the future, and being able to go back and talk about the parts of this that were really successful would be helpful.
Yeah, I would echo that, and just what Chrissy mentioned about the conversations really resonates with us, and I think this goes back to the process being the most important piece, and Cranberry did an incredible job each step of the way, making sure that they were getting input each step and not just waiting until an end point. And I think that's an important piece of the process that is transferable sort of across any kind of work within the school or within a district, is having really intentional points to get input and feedback. And I think Cranberry did an incredible job with that.
I like that. I like the specificity of what you just said. Erica, are you raising your hand?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
And this is just more education on my part as a new board member, but is there signals that we can more proactively identify schools that need this type of intervention versus waiting for the test scores to bubble that up? Because I know that there's plenty of schools that would be interested in this type of analysis, but may not be at the same place from a test score perspective as Cranberry and Nathan Hale were.
So I'm just, every one of our schools needs a strong school improvement planning process. And one of the changes we made this year, Erica, was that the principals not only had a school improvement plan, but they linked it to the professional learning plan. And part of that professional learning plan for each school is also about the leadership structures, the teacher leadership, the engagement in professional learning, the follow-up, when does the data team become supported? And how you're able to put that plan together keeps you focused where you can actually see growth and see impact. one of the hardest things in a school system is when you're working really hard, but you don't see the impact from it, right? So this kind of school improvement planning with professional learning, and then we have buildings that couple that with walkthroughs and instructional walks where they're actually seeing the impact in the classroom. It's more than just the data at the checkpoints, right? It's about those organic processes that happen every day. So our best system is that we have checks and balances with data, but that we have daily work, right? That authentic work and that authentic conversation at the grade level meeting, at the department meeting, at the faculty meeting, during one of our learning cycles, on one of our instructional walks. Those regular processes are the points that help us to continue to improve and stay focused. And I'd say a lot of those structures are being put in place. A good example in Narragansett School with their lab school and how they've gone on their walks to make sure that Quad D is living in their school. We know that the school is the unit of change, right? Leadership is powerful and identity matters. And when a school coalesces and comes around that identity and then names it and builds it into their processes, we watch the incremental shifts that are occurring. The gift of Mass Insight was really being able to take us through a structured process to make sure that those pieces were in place and we had the flow of how to build those pieces together and to build that ownership. So it's a very helpful process.
Thank you. And truly none of this can be extrapolated out to other schools in any level of similarity. It's really just, we have to keep the learnings to Cranberry and Nathan Hale.
Erica, if I may add, because I take all the different schools through a school improvement planning process, and Jenna and I luckily this year have been able to collaborate quite a bit, is that there is a real structure in place with a calendar for when we check in with different schools at the different levels, and making sure that we're actually checking in on the goals that they had and the priorities that they had indicated in the school improvement planning process. And we actually check in with them 3 times a year. And the last time we checked in was around budget to make sure that we're actually allocating the correct resources to match the priorities. And that's something that we've actually been able to do this year with our school improvement planning process. So the more I learn from like Mass Insight and from other experiences, the more I can actually perfect our own process and make sure that I am leveraging what we learned from the Mass Insight process. And I was there with Cranberry the entire time too, to just make sure that we're weaving these conversations through all the schools, not just the schools that end up needing a longer process, like the 2 days that the staff spent together, but that those 4 pieces of school improvement planning do exist for all schools.
Awesome, thank you.
Did anyone else have any questions that they wanted to ask?
Yeah, Sarah.
I can't see people. Yeah, Colin, is that you?
Yes, hi. First, I want to just thank Jenna and Kristen and Mike for walking us through that. And I was particularly interested to hear how you were able to navigate the very challenging situation of the last few weeks and with regard to our public health crisis. And so kudos to the entire team for really making the process work. I guess my question is on the other side, on the school improvement plan, whether and how that plan may be rearticulated or contextualized in the context of the pandemic, which of course is going to continue to affect the way that we deliver instruction for quite a while. Yeah, I don't know if that was a well-worded question. I'm just curious to know if the school improvement plan is going to be particularly tailored to learning in the age of Corona.
Right. Well, I think that's something, those are some of the conversations we're having now. At this time, I mean, again, Of course, none of us could foresee what was going to happen in March. But now I do. I think Norwalk did a wonderful job sort of getting things up and running quickly. But right now is the time we're gathering some evidence really to see how is this affecting our students? What has been really successful? What has been challenging? If we have to take this to the next step and continue this or do this again next year, we'll have so much more experience under our belt and more information to sort of know where we are and how it's affecting our students. At that point, I think in terms of our actual plan and how it will directly affect it, we'll have a better understanding when we know where students are. Because already part of our plan is to talk about how do we provide the support that our students need, both at that tier 1 level of instruction in their classroom, but also at the higher supports of 2 and 3. But that's going to look a little bit different for us depending on how all of our students are being affected by this. What's the most successful means of getting them through instruction in this way? So I can't say we're quite ready to tell you exactly what that will look like in our plan, but there are already conversations that we're having as we're already shifting our timelines of when we will implement certain things that are new, as we have to backtrack a little bit now in the fall. So there is a direct impact on the plan, but I can't say that we have it solidified at the moment.
If I can just pop in for a second and say, there's a lot of discussion among the other boards of education in the state of Connecticut, and there's like an email list of chairs of boards of education, and it's very difficult because it's not possible to do an apples to apples comparison with assessments right now. So any data-based reform or change that you're making, it's going to be very difficult to have a measurable outcome in these circumstances. You can't say, oh, if I give a child an assessment at home, because the home circumstances are not, you can't control for the differences in those. And so I'm just putting that in there, and I'm going to mute myself again.
I would just, yeah, and to jump into, Colin, I just really want to appreciate the question. I think it's a really important one, and one that certainly districts and schools across the country are asking. I would add, from just a Mass Insight perspective, I've had the opportunity to talk to quite a few different leaders across districts at this time, and I think something that has really stuck with me is, in thinking about this, is the challenges that existed before COVID aren't necessarily different challenges now in terms of student outcomes. So the plan still applies. What may have to change is the implementation. And schools can work on that. Schools can manage that based on whether it will be distance learning or whether there will be a hybrid situation. And as I think of Cranberry specifically, and their work around math and math PD, there's a lot that can be done in a virtual space for math PD. So that's actually not going to have to be a barrier for Cranberry. There's a lot that implementation might look different, but the quality of the plan, I think, will hold through. And I would also add to Sarah and Erica what you were mentioning, this question around the data, and that is a big one. And I think more than ever, formative assessments will be important each step of the way. So not only waiting till the end for the summative, for the state test. And again, I think this is a real strength of Cranberry. They're using exemplars in math. And those exemplars are all school-based. And so whether or not the state test happens, Cranberry will be able to know to what extent their students are growing and learning and performing in math, because they have school-based exemplars. And so I think that's just another great example of how Cranberry is navigating COVID-19 specifically and the uncertainty of the fall.
Thank you.
That's a really good point about qualitative assessment. Also, exemplars are really cool. Does anyone else have any questions? Nobody? Going once, going twice? Okay. Would anyone like to say anything as sort of like a wrap up or a transition out? Or shall we?
We're going to transition to our second school, Sarah. So
Yep.
we'll have Jenna put the back up, and we'll move into telling a little bit about Nathan Hale's story.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Great. All right. So that folks can see a screen that says the story of Nathan Hale. Are we able to see? Great, thanks, Sarah. All right, so we are also had the opportunity and the honor of working with Nathan Hale. Wanted to give a bit of an update of the progress there and what's coming next. I want to preface this by saying it was always the district's hope that after Cranberry's process of the school improvement planning, Nathan Hale would engage in school improvement planning as well. The way the timeline worked out was less than ideal for obvious reasons. Cranberry finished their school improvement planning at the end of February, and it wasn't but just a couple weeks into March where students were out of buildings. And there was certainly a crisis and a need that the district had to attend to. And so Nathan Hale's process is on pause because of that. And so we're going to share what has been done so far with the preface that there's been a pause. It had to be based on stakeholder needs, based on student, school, everybody had a crisis to respond to. And so again, I just want to also acknowledge and thank Nathan Hale, Dr. Saki, and Christina for being here and welcome them into the conversation. That said, we won't be able to ask them to speak to the process in the same way that we were able to ask Cranberry to, because it just hasn't happened yet. So with that in mind, let me give us a quick overview of the work that we've been able to do so far with Nathan Hale. So again, our team was able to spend a couple days at Nathan Hale in the fall, and we visited classrooms and we talked to teachers, and again, we talked to students, and we organized all of that data and information again into the school readiness report, a non-evaluative report to really be the launching pad for school improvement planning. And so out of our visit with Nathan Hale, all that we learned, again, many strengths. Some key strengths here is one is that we heard that there was a real improvement in the culture and climate of the building, even from recent years. So Nathan Hale has acknowledged this, and they have put in place steps already to increase the positive and sort of engaging environment for their students. We heard that from kids, we heard that from staff, we heard that from leadership. Secondly, we also heard from students about feeling safe, again, feeling like they had a trusted adult in the building that they could go to, that they could rely on. And then finally, that all students have access to enrichment. Nathan Hale has a pretty incredible enrichment program that allows all students to be involved in different activities or clubs or even topics during the school day. And so we heard about the enrichment program that is available to students at Nathan Hale. I think that's a real model for schools in many places. And we also heard about some key challenges. Again, these emerged as challenges as we talked with teachers, students, and families. One was the rigor of instruction. Again, when visiting classrooms, the extent to which students had opportunities to engage in critical thinking, deep thinking, academic conversation and discussion, there's an opportunity there for more of that to exist. And again, this is something that Nathan Hale themselves we talked about in stakeholder groups. And so that is one noticing as well. The second was around the number of initiatives for school improvement. Nathan Hale is really committed to improving academic outcomes for kids. And as such, there are a lot of efforts in place. And what the challenge is that with so many efforts, it becomes taxing. There's only so much capacity. And so the challenge is sort of an overwhelming number of initiatives right now. And Nathan Hale is working to prioritize and streamline for both students and staff. And thirdly is communication, open, transparent communication, making sure that folks have the information that they need and input opportunities each step of the way. And so that's another challenge that emerged from our visit and conversations with Nathan Hale. In terms of what's upcoming, again, in 2020, so the work is on pause right now, but when we are able to, again, we will launch the school improvement planning process with Nathan Hale. Again, there were a lot of learnings from the work with Cranberry, and one of them is around how important the process was, how important the folks of the building doing the work is, and how important it was to be in person. And so the district made a decision to say, you know what, we think that is so critical to this process that we are going to pause and make sure that we can do so in person when it's safe again. And so that work will continue in 2020. And we're very much looking forward to that with Nathan Hale. That is all that I have for an update. Again, we are not able to ask Nathan Hale for an update on their school improvement planning. It has not happened yet, but certainly would welcome them into the conversation. And at this point, we have questions, so I will stop the screen share. I would also invite Sandra to join in and welcome any comments. I've had the great honor of working with Sandra each step of the way with Nathan Hale as well.
Sorry about that. My son and my daughter are playing hide and seek, and my son thought that my daughter might be in here, but she's not. Anyways, Sandra, go ahead. Sorry about that.
No, I think that Jenna did a good job just summarizing what the process was for Nathan Hale. And really it's about, do you guys have any questions? Al and Christina are both here. If you guys had clarifying questions about the Nathan Hale SRA process.
One of the things I would like to mention to the board as well is that, you know, when we started the process, we were very intentional about why we were looking at the process, what we hoped to gain, how we would use a school improvement planning process, how it would build community within the school, keep us focused on our outcomes and our initiatives. But there's another byproduct. You know, we've been so fortunate to have exceptional leadership in both of these buildings, but we also have some change in leadership that will be occurring. And one of the powers of the school improvement plan and this process is that a new leader will be able to come in and will have this data set, a school improvement plan, the implementation plan, the steps are there, the team is there, or in Nathan Hale's process, this will be kind of the roadmap for the principal to begin with, right? This is where we're going to enter, and the new principal can be a part of that process as well. So it's interesting as we see a time of change in both of these buildings, how this mass insight process is actually going to help us leverage the work and continue so that, you know, whenever we go through a transition, people are worried about TYNT, this year's new thing. What's going to happen now? And in a school improvement process, a good plan helps to build the continuity and the alignment as the school moves forward. So I think that was a wonderful byproduct that we didn't know would happen going into the 2021 school year.
That's great. Dr. Sacchi, or did either of you, I know you're very early in the process of doing this, I know. Did either of you want to speak to any of your experience about it, or?
You know, I think just to kind of, well, good evening to everyone.
Hi.
You know, hello. Just to kind of share a little bit of what, you know, Jenna and Sandra we're talking about. We are early in the process, but I think it was important that staff and parents had an opportunity to be part of those.
We lost you.
Al, we can't hear you.
Something happened.
No, we can't hear Al. I think what he was starting to say was his appreciation for the different stakeholder groups being involved in the process.
Yeah.
Al, you may have the same driver problem that I was having in March, but I discovered that I could mute and then unmute and it would come back. You could try that.
Great. Am I back on?
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you. So yes, so just saying, you know, that entire process I think was very powerful, and I think it was very beneficial to the parents, students, and staff to be part of that conversation. You know, for Nathan Hale, we were fortunate because, you know, some of the recommendations that were made by Mass Insight, we'd already started doing some work on that naturally, internally. You know, so even changing some of the structures to our leadership team structures, we looked at increasing our level of communication, you know, between myself, Christina, and staff. We added some additional routines and protocols to assist teachers in the way that they could better engage students. So, you know, we're trying to be as very purposeful as possible with our work, and we're happy to see that the changes that we're making were aligned with what Mass Insight was suggesting anyway. And I do like the fact that, you know, for a new leadership team coming in now that you're having a new principal, a new assistant principal, they have a roadmap. They have something to get started on, and I think that's a powerful tool. And then they still have obviously all the staff and community still there, as well as Sandra and Jenna for that additional support. So, thank you for the process. I just wanted to share that.
And
That's
if I could just speak briefly to add on to what Dr. Saki said already. I think the other great thing right now for Nathan Hale is that the team, the teachers, the staff, the parents, the students, I feel like they're in a really good place to be able to do this improvement work next year with Mass Insight support. I think the morale is up. As we mentioned, the climate is up. And I think that we're just in a really good position right now to be able to do this work, really mindfully and, purposefully. I think like Dr. Saki said, we are ready for it. The staff is ready for it. And they may not have felt that same way if we had to do this work maybe in November when we first started off with the inventory with Mass Insight. So I think that next year, the school is really in a great place to just kick off and run.
And if I may add, we do have some plans along with Jenna to sort of do a recalibration with the staff when we go back, including some interviews with staff, given the fact that this will be almost next fall, and sort of refreshing our assessments and making sure that we are actually reflecting the state of Nathan Hale when we come back. So that is part of our plan. We've spoken about how is it that we can accomplish that. And we look forward to presenting the staff with those findings and leverage that to do the school improvement planning. So it wouldn't just be based just on this report. It's going to be based on some new data.
That's great. It sounds like this has been a very positive experience for everybody and self-reflective and also inclusive, which is really what we're looking for in everything we do. So does anybody else have any other questions about this? Nobody? Okay, thank you so much, Jenna, and thank you, Kristen and Dr. Saki and everybody for being here. Stephen, did you want to say anything else about this topic?
No, just to thank everybody involved, particularly the school leaders and the faculty in each school that participated in this. It was not mentioned tonight, but this was a lot of work, and it was a lot of engagement on top of, all the day-to-day things our teachers are charged to do and our school leaders have to manage. So, I'm hoping that this will also perhaps provide a basis for how the district can support schools that may be underperforming in the future. And I think it was a learning experience for all of us in that sense. And I think we're very, very pleased so far with the Mass Insight partnership.
That's great. Excellent. I'm very happy to hear all of that. Okay, so if we don't have any more on this topic, thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you for everybody, and thank you, Sandra, too. And we can go to the report on Norwalk Athletics. We have Joe Modafari here. He's actually my center square.
Sarah, I think that I don't know if people know this, but I'd like to mention it for everyone's benefit. I think Joe Modafari is the only person in Connecticut history or athletic history to become the state athletic director of the year and then become the national athletic director of the year in the same year. So he certainly knows this area, and I think it was very appropriate as we were dealing with this issue to ask him to get involved in it as his swan song as he retired. And I was very interested in the board seeing this report because I know there is a lot of interest on the board in terms of athletics, and Mr. Palma is the athletic liaison, but the board has never had a workshop on athletics. And there's a lot of information in this report that deals not only with the issue of how do we get more faculty to coach, but it kind of gives you an overview of the program as well. So very pleased to have Joe with us tonight, and he's going to spend some time with you on his report.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Adamowski. Brenda, you can share it and we'll start up. I'm not going to be that long. I timed myself about 9 minutes. So with a bunch of questions, it'll be like 11, 12 minutes. Okay, there we are. All right. First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Adamowski and the Board of Education for letting me put this work together. Having an opportunity to continue impacting Norwalk Public Schools is a personal point of pride and objective of mine. I hope you find the following slides useful and helpful as we continue building a more successful and impactful school system. The following slides will dive into current situations of teachers and coaches in Norwalk Public Schools. More specifically, I want to hit 4 key points. 1, why increasing the number of teachers and coaches in the school is important. 2, what the current situation looks like across Norwalk Public Schools and the border of the FCAC. FCAC is Fairfield County Interscholastic Athletic Association. As a reference point, and mostly importantly, both potential reasons for why we are seeing a decrease in teachers who are coaching, as well as a potential solution to create a better situation. Next slide, please, Dr. Myers. Why this matters. From the beginning, let's understand why increasing the number of teachers in the school is important. From my personal experience in reading, I found 3 key reasons why having more teachers who coach is valuable to the school. 1, coaches create more impactful teachers. Coaches have an understanding of how to create individual success for each of their athletes. Bringing this into the classroom creates teachers more flexible in teaching students with diverse learning habits. 2, teachers are great at creating a deep sense of interest and engagement among their students. Bringing this to the athletic field creates coaches who can teach the students how to think through sports in different lenses. 3, altogether, when a great number of teachers also coach, you create a connected environment where students and adults see each other in more than just one light. This ultimately creates a more close-knit and more effective school. Those 3 reasons are why it matters to increase more teachers in coaching. This is Dr. Myers, please. Next slide. Current situation. With the understanding, I want to look into knowing what is currently happening in Norwalk Public Schools compared to the general public. While I'm unable to find stats across the country, we're able to work back with athletic directors in the FCAC to build a baseline. We're currently seeing across the FCAC, there's 13.2 teachers who are in each school. Across Norwalk and Bryan High School, we see an average of 15.5 teachers who coach in each school. While these numbers would identify that we are above the average in the FCAC, I want to explain that. Yes, we might be successful, but no, we're not leading. There's a wide range of numbers here with FCS schools well below the average and other FCS schools in the 20th percentile. We can continue growing our numbers and continue having more teachers among our coaching staff. Dr. Myers, next slide, please. After understanding our current landscape, I want to understand what potential barriers are laying in the way for more teachers to become involved in coaching. What my reflections here show is that the basic barriers into coaching opportunities, certification are not difficult at all. Taking the spring season as an example, we have a wide range of head coaching opportunities, 16 and 15 spots at Norwalk and Brian McMahon, respectively. This is on par with the FCX average and is not including assistant coaches. Coaches' opportunities do exist for teachers to become involved and grow their experience within our athletic department. On the right side of the slide, you see coaching certificates. Now, as a teacher, it's quite easy because you'll pull the state of Connecticut teaching certificate. You can apply for a coaching certificate, and that's no problem at all. And then the renewal is every 5 years, you have to have 15 hours of coaching seminars to obtain that. As a non-certified teacher, you can get a year temporary certificate to coach, but then eventually you have to get the 45 hours course to coach, and then the renewal is the same. The basic barriers are not a good reason why there is not a higher level of teachers who are not coaching. Dr. Myers, next slide, please. Beyond these basic barriers, I do identify with 6 key reasons why teachers are potentially not coaching, which can be categorized into 2 key buckets: recognizing shortage and a common concern. Recognizing shortage are pieced in our coaching curriculum that are lacking and not providing consistent support. Common concerns are generally worried that are making teachers afraid of becoming involved in coaching. With recognizing shortages, 3 key pillars strike out. Firstly, there's a lack of knowledge and enthusiasm among the teacher body and coming to our extracurricular activities. Teachers at times are unaware of how to become involved. Secondly, there's a lack of consistently training to keep teachers already involved on par to continue. And lastly, there is a perception of potential lack of pay relating to teachers that actually coach outside the school structure, referring to travel, AAU, and Premier. You are losing teachers that'll coach in these different programs because it's less time, it's more money, and they do exist. With common concerns, 3 key pillars exist as well. There's a general concern of parents becoming over-involved and negatively affecting the teacher's career, both in athletics and education. Secondly, coaches are getting out of hand, coaches in time of social media where a mistake or wrong choice of words can be quickly amplified. Lastly, teachers are worried of dealing with additional hours and emotional connections among a tough athletic schedule. While these reasons are real, I do believe there are solutions. The next slide digs into 5 key ideas. Dr. Myers, next slide, please. Thank you. I see 5 things of where we can grow a stronger connected to our academics and athletic programs. To be clear, there are currently ideas. I think these ideas could be built upon creating a positive difference among our school system. 1, we must identify the willingness potential of teachers hired having towards becoming a part of our school community, including athletics. During the hiring process, identify hiring teachers who have a desire to become involved with extracurricular activities, building support for our school community. 2, we'd also see success by revamping our physical education system into 2 pieces. Provide access to PE teachers who want to coach in our schools and restructure our roles so the PE teachers who are coaching are able to teach in the high schools. While the early start change is upon us, this is definitely going to help because you're going to have the opportunity of more teachers. They're not in the school, but they're teachers. And I think that's extremely important. They're teachers, and our kids could benefit with the teachers coaching them. You're going to have more because the elementary, middle school are getting out earlier. So that is going to definitely help the issue of both high schools, pulling some of those teachers that would like to coach. Change will create. Lastly, we provide support to potential teacher coaches under 2 manners, which will build confidence and willingness among our teachers. Firstly, we can create seminars that they could be structured to build for our teachers to become involved in coaching, as well as helping teachers overcome their concerns of lack of training. In total, I believe a combination of these thoughts could lead to success in having teachers become more involved in coaching. Next slide, please. I'd just like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to put this together. I'm a true believer that we can get more teachers coaching. I think they're not aware of how they could get involved in extracurricular activities other than coaching in each school and to build a better community. Are there any questions?
Thank you. This is great. I really appreciate the focus on how the different, I mean, you think of them as being separate things, but they're really not to the student. It's all part of the one school experience, and increasing opportunities for that to happen together seems very healthy.
When you look at the percentage of kids participate at Norwalk and McMahon, it's, I retired a year ago, but back when I was there for a period of time, it was between 40 and 50% of the kids that play one sport, a unique number. So the coaches do have a lot of connection to those kids, and quite often those kids have connection with the coaches, as they do as the teachers too. But to put them both together, the kids can benefit, the community can benefit, and it fits the school. So they just get out there and get more teachers to coach.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Does anybody have any questions? Erica?
I do. I have a couple questions. So I know that you shared with us where we sit in comparison to the rest of the FCAC, but do you have a goal in mind of where you would like us to go, given the talent pool that's available? Do you see 25, 50%? What is the goal number?
I think it'd be nice to be over that 20%. Don't get me wrong, it'd be great to be 30, 35%, but to get over to 20% where you're falling in line with some of the other schools that border Norwalk. I mean, and it could be possible too. You do have the AAU and the premier teams that are stealing coaches. But I think if a coach can buy into the school and buy into the community, they prefer to coach there. With support, with some of the common concerns, with support, with seminars to help them. But a lot of young coaches, they're not staying around. I mean, when you take McMahon, John Cross was there for 17 years. You go down from John Cross, the next few coaches are 5, 6, 7 years. Coaches aren't lasting for one reason or the other, and people are kind of they're losing interest. But to keep them together, it adds to the community.
And are you aware, Joe, I'm going to draw a comparison to the Danbury Public School System and their partnership with WestCon, that they partner with the WestCon Teacher Prep Program in an effort to hire a more diverse teacher body. Is there a grant program available with our local colleges where we could reach out to students who are pursuing a career in PE, or an undergrad with a minor in PE, where we could partner with them, have them come into the school system as a mentor, and then fold them into the system and hire them once they graduate?
I think quite often, you have Southern, if they're a teacher, of course, they have Southern. We've got a lot of student teachers that would come in from Southern. And we ended up over the last few years actually hiring some of the PE teachers in Norwalk, not necessarily at Brown, McMahon, or Norwalk High, which does add to the program. But I think we just got to put out there that, especially if you're a PE teacher, you need to be part of this. Not for long. I'm not saying you got to give us 15, 20 years, but I'm saying give us a few years. Some of our better coaches that have been at McMahon and Norwalk, they gave us 15, 20 years. You're not getting that anymore, and you got to go out and pursue them. I think, again, Erica, what you're referring to is that partnership. I'm aware of it, and I think it's helpful. But again, remember, Westcott and Danbury, they're right there. I mean, we're a distance, and then if you look at some of the schools that are near our area, they don't have phys ed. The best phys ed school on the East Coast is Springfield. Springfield is outstanding, and then maybe Southern in the past years. But yeah, I think we all got to chip in and do the best we can to get them interested. But also, I think the key is that interview process. Some of these younger teachers coming in that we're hiring, they're unaware of all the extracurricular activities. And I think it's important to buy into the community. There's more than just teaching and coaching. You're molding our young kids, and the kids are benefiting from the time and effort you're putting in to your class and to your athletics. And that's what education is all about, to reach these kids. If you're a teacher or if you're a coach, make an attempt and buy in.
And my last question would be for the parents and the students who fear that there's a compromise in the expertise and the competencies of selecting from a pool of candidates that just also happen to be teachers. Can you speak a little bit about, the success in other school districts and, how their athletics program have not been compromised by limiting their pool to just teachers who also happen to be coaches? And I'll just say up front, I was blessed in the fact that my coaches were also teachers, so I did not experience a disconnect. So I don't necessarily think that exists, but I would think that people would probably want you to speak a little bit about that.
I think that it's important. Erica, come back with that again, because you kind of phased out of my voice. I didn't really hear you.
So what I was bringing up was the parents and the students who may fear that Norwalk is compromising in the expertise and the competencies of our coaches by limiting our recruitment pool to those coaches who also happen to be teachers.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah, okay.
I got it. Okay, first of all, that there are districts out there that requires you to go through the pool of all teachers and hire within. Then afterwards, you look outside. I think it's important that you hire the most qualified teacher. I'm not saying a non-teacher can't be a qualified teacher and be successful and reach the kids. I've seen McMahon, we've had quite a few coaches that fit that. But in the same sense, I'm a true believer in the education the teacher goes through and the process. They're educated. They really are. They should understand the kids. So I think that you open it up to both. And I hired non-teachers, I hired teachers, but give them help. Give them help, whatever it may be. Support them one way or the other. Quite often you look at winning and losing, but it's more than that. It's molding these kids into special individuals. So when they step out of here, they can continue in life. That's what a coach is, to make people successful, make people do the right thing and make them responsible. Did that answer your question?
It did, and I think it was important to get that out and say it out loud, because I do think it's a very important point. Thank you.
Erica, I wanted, if I could, I wanted to amplify on Joe's answer to your second question. I think there is a talent aspect to this. And, you know, this is a lesson we may be able to take from private schools. So if we were a private high school, one of our, any of our high schools, we have 4 high schools. Let's assume for a second that they were all private schools. The private school model is never to hire a teacher only to teach. When you make a decision on a teacher, you're hiring a teacher to teach a certain subject and coach a certain sport. And that's what private schools tend to do universally. And I think some of the, you know, while we may not be able to do that contractually, at least under our current labor agreements, I think that at the time of hire, you know, the ability to commit to a coaching vacancy, I think, is an important question to ask a new teacher.
Heidi has been waiting patiently to have a question.
That's fine. Joe, you did a fantastic job presenting, and you answered basically any questions that I had. I just kind of wanted to add some comments. I think it's also, you mentioned about awareness, but to me, I think it's a win-win situation when you have continuity in the classroom, in and out of the field, meaning in the classroom, outside of the classroom. So I think that only benefits our students because they develop those relationships with teachers, whether they're certified or non-certified. And again, it's building those ties. I think it's really, really important for our students because they see their teachers in school every day. So it's almost as if it's a mentor figure for many of our students within the classroom, outside of the classroom, as well as outside of the building. So I think if we can keep nurturing this and working through this process with many of our coaches and having newer coaches and existing coaches, I think I'll have a lasting impact on many of our students.
That's the key.
So I just
impact on
wanted
our
to bring that
students.
out.
Impact on our students.
Exactly. Good, thank you.
You have another question?
Are there any other questions?
Yes, I had one.
Barbara.
So first I want to say thank you for this. This is a great presentation and really on the nose. I was home helping my mother downsize in March and found notes from my English teacher who was also the tennis coach, who also built the sets for the class play. So I know that kind of relationship really reinforces feeling secure in your environment and can really change a life. I'm wondering, as an extension from this discussion, if we could, as a board, examine the impact of the choice to change our middle school sports programs. We're now 2 years into that, and take a look at how that's impacting our high school teams and whether we feel that we're adequately preparing our students for that opportunity, and you know, making sure that we have those mentorship relationships happening at the middle school level as well. I guess that's for Dr. Adamowski, but really almost for Dr. Estrella, since it would be a future-looking question.
I feel that's important in athletics in high school if you have a feeder program. The Norwalk Athletics, they do a pretty good job citywide, but I mean, it could definitely help. It could definitely help. But I do believe that the change in time is going to help the coaching at both high schools, because you're going to be able to pull kids from kids, can be able to pull teachers into the high school to coach. I do believe that.
That's great to hear. I'm wondering if the staff could give us an overview next year at some point. I'm curious also to look at if there was a demographic shift on our teams when we take away the free competitive sports at middle school level, if we're seeing a shift. So I think that's something I want to examine as we go forward. So again, you were studying high school, so it's not for you, Mr. Mataferri, but just something to put on the table for the board to consider as we're moving forward, to really examine that decision and whether it had any adverse impacts.
Okay.
I have one more question. I do. And Joe, you may not know this, is maybe for Dr. Adamowski, but since you put this emphasis on PE teachers, I'm just thinking back to my own high school career and my friends who are coaches now, they all happen to not, or one is a PE teacher. What is it truly linked? Or again, only just because you had mentioned PE over and over again.
Just like years ago. Okay,
Yeah.
like when your dad and I were in high school, those teachers are hired to coach and teach. They've come away from that. They've come away from that. But I think it's important that PE teachers coach. Why? Because they see the athletes in physical education class every day. They see them, and it could benefit their programs. I'm not saying they have to coach 20 years, like I said earlier, but initially they should be involved in coaching. They should be part of the athletic program because they see the athletes every day. Every day they see the athletes come in and out. Because quite often you have kids that are very talented, but need a little extra push to participate. They're hesitant. And that hesitation could really, it could really benefit the kid, but hurt them because they were hesitant. But a PE teacher that sees them could convince them you should play. You should play. That maybe that's old school, call it what you want, but I think it's there.
Okay, thank you for expanding on that. That clarifies it. Thank you.
Great. Anybody who I can't see have anything else that they wanted to say or add? I crane my head as if that will make the screen go, but it won't. Okay, in that case,
I'm good.
Go ahead.
I just want to thank you folks again. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. As a citizen in Norwalk, you folks are really keeping things together, and we got through the 3 months because of all your hard work. And as a resident citizen, I want to thank you very much. I really
Thank
do.
you so much. And thank you for your wonderful presentation and your thoughtful hard work about it.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so Erica, did you want to say one more thing or no? No?
Nope.
No, I saw a hand wiggle. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is public comment, but Maura tells me that there is nobody signed up.
That is correct. Nobody signed up.
Okay, so then the next item on our agenda is adjournment. Thank everybody who presented tonight, and I would love a motion to adjourn. Heidi, was that you? And Barbara, you'll second? All in favor?
That was me.
Aye. Aye. Okay, good night, everybody. Get some rest.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.